All right. Welcome, everyone, to our current research on microbiome and heart health. I'm here with Katrine Whiteson, and we're going to be doing a little talk about the current research on heart health and the microbiome. And then I'm going to follow up with some really cool recipes, one of which will hopefully save you some money without buying eggs. And so they're really cool recipes, and I'm going to hand it over to Katrina right now.
Great. Thank you very much, Jess. It's really nice to be here. If you guys were here, you would know it's raining here in SoCal and there's, flowers everywhere. It's like a really nice time of year here. If it was the Greatest British Bake Show, we'd be like panning out to the garden because there is a garden here and I just like was admiring the chamomile flowers and everything. So, okay, well, anyway, welcome. We're going to talk about heart health and the microbiome today. And actually, it's a very robust field of research. There's a lot to tell you. It was hard to choose the stories to share. Here's a ridiculous AI generated image about heart health and the microbiome. But I mean, it's absolutely true that our gut microbiome health and diversity, which can be promoted by eating well, is very central to our cardiovascular health. And I'll start with some basics about cardiovascular health, and we'll talk about how the microbiome impacts that as well. So just before I get too far, I always start with a definition of the microbiome. Microbiomes are collections or communities of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microbes that live in a specific environment. So the gut microbiome is definitely the headquarters of the microbiome. In the human body, it's a 3-pound organ, essentially, with thousands and thousands of microbes, but many other organisms harbor microbiomes, like plant roots are a really important example. And, nothing is sterile. Pretty much every environment has microbes, which is fun to think about. So I'm here in the kitchen with Chef Jess. I'll give a lecture for the next half an hour or so, and then Jess is going to prepare 3 really wonderful recipes for us. We're getting through the year of lectures that we prepared this year, and we still have 2 more that are listed here on the slide and also on the website. And the recipes, which were mailed out to you last night, are also available on the website. Here's a little sneak peek, and I can see the ingredients over here in the kitchen. The chocolate banana date smoothie, the chicken asparagus bundles with garlic sauce, and a vegan egg salad, as Jess mentioned, to save you money on eggs. And it looks really, really good. And just as a backup to the gut microbiome, as I mentioned, the intestine contains 3 pounds of 10 to the 9 to 10 to the 11th bacteria per gram, mostly anaerobes. So in a healthy gut, most of those bacteria in your colon are anaerobes, meaning organisms that grow in environments that do not have any oxygen. In fact, they're very sensitive to oxygen. If they were to see an oxygen, they would find it very toxic and potentially die. So we have mostly anaerobes in an oxygen-free environment in our gut. And then there's some bacteria that can tolerate oxygen too. There's just huge numbers of microbes. Most of the microbes in the human body are in the gut, and most of the ones that are relevant to cardiovascular disease are also in the gut. The way you support a healthy gut microbiome, honestly, is very similar to how you support your health in general. Maintaining a healthy diet, leaning into plants and fermented foods can be really helpful. Sleep, exercise, drinking enough water. And these are all things that your grandparents or great grandparents could have told you, but we're just really understanding how important they are for keeping your microbiome healthy these days. Commercial probiotics are not likely to help. We'll talk about that a little bit today. And avoiding antibiotic overuse can be really helpful too. The premise for why fiber is so important is that when you eat fiber, you fuel all those anaerobes, the bacteria that live without oxygen in your colon. They love to turn the fiber into fermentation products, acidic, sour fermentation products. You all know what I'm talking about, the sourness of yogurt or other fermented foods. That's the sign of anaerobic fermentation. So the bacteria turn those fibers into short chain fatty acids, which are the favorite fuels of the cells lining your gut. And so if you're eating fiber, It has so many positive health benefits. It protects you from glucose spikes after you eat. It protects you from obesity and heart disease, increases nutrient absorption and immune responses. In fact, there's now big studies going where they give people a high fiber diet and then have them get a flu vaccine. And you know what? Your antibody response to a flu vaccine is very robust after you've been eating fiber. Same thing is true for cancer treatment. You're also protected if you take antibiotics. So it's just really impossible to overemphasize how important it is to be eating fiber. And it's in some ways not a science question anymore. It's just a matter of figuring out how to make sure that people figure out how to get their fiber content up in their diets. But specifically in the context of heart health, I'll just back up and talk about heart health a little bit. So heart disease is the leading cause of death in the world. That's been true. We've known that for more than a century. Every year in the United States, there's about 1 million heart attacks, and 1 in 3 are fatal. This might just sound like bad news, but actually the trends in some ways are getting much better. We've really taken public health messages to heart. There's much less smoking in the United States. We actually have less heart disease since the 1950s in many ways. But nearly half of US adults have high blood pressure. Nearly 3/4 have an unhealthy weight. More than half of US adults have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. These are all things that could be helped with a better diet. So prediabetes in many cases can be reversed with diet. And so the kinds of recipes that Jess is showing us how to make really can make a difference. But I want to share some good news too. Since 1950, death rates from cardiovascular disease have actually declined 60%. So there's good news in here too. Our medicine has gotten better. Our public health messaging about not smoking has really helped. So there's good news in here too. And to be honest, quality of life for humans on Earth is so much better now than it was a century ago. I mean, as you know, life expectancy has gone up so much in the 20th century. A lot of that comes from children surviving through the age of 5 more often, but a lot of it also comes from better care for cardiovascular disease. The number of people dying of a heart attack each year has actually dropped. It was half. If you had a heart attack in the 1950s, your chances of surviving were about half. Now it's much better. So 1 in 8.5 people who have a heart attack these days pass away. So you're way, way safer than you were 70 years ago. So it's good to have some, really positive messages. And I've already mentioned this, but cigarette smoking has fallen dramatically. Nearly half of US adults were smoking in the mid 1960s. Now it's about 11%. That's a really big difference, protecting us from cardiovascular disease. And yeah, here's a bunch of numbers. It's kind of overwhelming, but it's actually fun to see these kind of stats assembled by the American Heart Association. And you'll notice stroke and heart disease are being reported on together. They are similar risk factors that you need to worry about. And, big picture, lots of people are having heart attacks. Symptoms are different in men and women. I welcome questions about all this, actually, while Chef Jess is cooking. So feel free to come back to it. And a lot of the advice is just common sense. Avoid tobacco, get exercise, eat well. Those are the things you need to do to protect your health and to protect your heart. A lot of it has to do with cholesterol buildup in our arteries. And this is a normal part of aging. We've known this for centuries. We found arterial plaque buildups in Egyptian mummies. This has been going on since humans have existed. It starts in teenagers. So you do see cholesterol building up in the linings of arteries. And when you get these plaques forming, that's called atherosclerosis. That's a big part of heart disease. And, diet is part of it. Eating McDonald's, not going to be helpful in protecting you from heart disease, that's for sure. But as I said, it's a normal part of aging. It starts in our teenage years. And part of it has to do with diet. The old view was that atherosclerosis is a plumbing problem and that this fat-laden gunk would kind of build up on our arteries and eventually block our circulation. But we actually have a much better understanding of what happens these days. And it has more to do with the inflammatory response to the plaque buildup in our arteries. And if those plaques become unstable and rupture, then that leads to clotting and a big inflammatory response. And so usually a heart attack and some forms of stroke are happening at a moment where those plaques in the arteries are unstable and crack open in some way, and then you have an immune response to that. That's usually the type of event that leads to a heart attack and some kinds of stroke. Cholesterol is a big part of this. Cholesterol is something that every animal needs. This is a really normal part of health. Cholesterol seals our cell membranes and protects them from water-soluble molecules sneaking in. So in this diagram, you'll see cholesterol is pointed out. It's this yellow molecule with the honeycomb shapes to it. So cholesterol has really cool properties that it lines up in your cell membranes. It has water-loving parts and fat-loving parts, and it can kind of hang around in our cell membranes and keep them sealed. It helps keep our membrane tails flexible so that they're not locked into place. And so cholesterol is a normal part of health. Animals need cholesterol. It's not only bad. Also, animals need cholesterol, meaning you get it from eating animal products. You will not find cholesterol in plant-related foods. However, cholesterol does not mix well with blood. So to get it around our bodies, it has to get a ride on some proteins called lipoproteins. If you've ever had your blood cholesterol checked, you're probably used to these numbers. There's HDL, high density lipoproteins. They're the good guys. And LDL, low density lipoproteins. The high density ones tend to be mostly protein, and you can think of them like the cleanup crew. They go around picking up stray cholesterol that they find around your body. So they're actually really helpful in keeping your arteries and veins clear of plaques. They pick up the cholesterol so it can't build up into plaques. Whereas low density lipoproteins, those are mostly cholesterol. They're really messy. Think of them as just like a slob dumping cholesterol all over the place and actually making it easier for plaques to build up because they're just like dribbling cholesterol everywhere. So that's why when you get your blood measurements back, you want to see high HDL because that's the cleanup crew. And you want to see low LDL because those are the slobs that are dropping cholesterol everywhere. Okay, so big question I'm sure you've thought of, do genes or diet have a larger influence on our cholesterol levels? Well, most cholesterol is produced by our own bodies, so it's not really coming from our diet for the most part. And maybe you've seen those ads where they show a really fit-looking person who has high cholesterol versus a person who doesn't look as fit eating a burger or having low cholesterol. That's because it has to do with our own genetics and other factors that lead to our cholesterol or internal cholesterol production. So it's not really that diet that's the most important. In fact, lifestyle factors are really important, and as in exercise and sleep and other things that contribute to inflammation. And then part of it is diet. And so especially if you're prone to high cholesterol, it becomes even more important to avoid adding to the problem with dietary cholesterol. But I just want to point out here that look at the levels of cholesterol that you see in foods. It's, liver here has very high levels, eggs and chicken have high levels, but you're really not going to get much from plants. Plants don't really have cholesterol in them. Let's see if I can find there we go. Plants are low in cholesterol here. Nearly 10 liters of peanut oil have the same amount of cholesterol as an egg. So it takes a lot of plant material to get much cholesterol. So I have a lot of things I'm excited to share with you that are related to the gut microbiome and heart health. And here's kind of my big summary slide, but I'm going to walk through each of these stories one by one. But yeah, gut microbes really do have a big influence on our heart disease risk. I'm going to go through these one by one actually. So just let's hop right in. So gut microbes have a big influence on heart health. And one really important story that emerged from the work of Stanley Hazen at the Cleveland Clinic is that there is a really important metabolite that's produced by our gut microbes when we eat red meat. So red meat and eggs contain choline and carnitine, and there's other quaternary amino acids that are important ingredients that can lead to this. And they produce a very smelly molecule that's called trimethylamine N oxide, or TMAO. This molecule has been linked to increased risk of atherosclerosis. The story emerged nearly 10 years ago. I remember when the story emerged. It was a really big moment because it was so helpful to understand how our diet and our microbiome are related to our heart health. Now, Stan Hazen and many others around the world have followed up on this evidence. The citation I share with you here from 2024 is a study that has more than 11,000 people in it. So many of our microbiome hypotheses are still very early on, and the types of studies we have don't have that many people in them yet. So it's kind of harder to stand on the evidence. Well, this one is just really solid. So here's a study with more than 11,000 people in it showing that if you are eating red meat and have the right kind of microbes in your gut to have those turn into TMAO, this is associated with atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. Now, this is not just a doom and gloom story. This is like, there's something we can do about it. So if you are eating plant-based materials, even in addition to red meat, you can protect yourself from the production of these molecules. Most people probably have gut microbes that produce TMAO, and then sometimes those same foods get turned into healthier molecules. Our microbiome is so diverse. Most of us have both sides of that in our own gut microbiome. And this is a research question. What can we do to push our microbiome towards producing the healthier style molecule rather than these TMAO molecules, which are toxic and associated with atherosclerosis? That's a question. And then, another thing I'll say is when you eat dietary fiber, fiber is good at soaking up cholesterol. So if you are eating oatmeal at the same time as bacon, some of those molecules that might have negative impact are getting hidden in the fiber and you're protected from them. So all around, there's a lot of reasons that I can tell you that eating fiber is helpful here. And all around, it's fun to understand mechanisms by which eating red meat and eggs that contain dietary choline and carnitine have potentially negative outcomes in terms of heart disease. Okay, my next story that, you guys hear me saying this all the time, but it's fun to have more evidence. My next story has to do with fiber and heart health. So diets high in fiber, like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, promote a healthier gut microbiome by increasing the beneficial bacteria, the gut anaerobes we were just talking about, that produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. And the short-chain fatty acids have anti-inflammatory effects, improve blood sugar regulation, and help lower blood pressure. And all of that contributes to heart health. To be honest, I could cite so many papers that support this idea, but here I'm sharing with you a citation that is a study, a big cohort of adult men, where they show that the dietary fiber intake is associated with improved systemic inflammation, which is very tied to heart health. And this is very strong evidence. It's been shown in a lot of different ways in different cohorts of different types of people. So there's really strong evidence to support this. Okay, my next study is that your gut microbiome can contribute to high blood pressure, to hypertension. So an imbalance in gut microbiota is associated with inflammation and oxidative stress, and that can contribute to high blood pressure. There's studies that suggest that an unhealthy microbiome, and of course, an unhealthy microbiome is hard to define. Each of us have such different microbiomes, so that is a little bit hard to define. But we always know that eating fiber and fermented foods will improve your microbiome health. But an unhealthy microbiome may impair nitric oxide production, and that's actually really important for your blood vessel dilation and blood flow regulation. And here's a study that explores the way that nitric oxide production is influenced by gut microbiome composition. And so this has also been shown now in many different studies. And the take-home message really is the same as the one you're hearing all the time, which is to just, when you choose healthy lifestyle, including dietary fiber intake and sleeping and so forth, then all of these systems work together, and that will improve your nitric oxide production levels to optimize healthy blood vessel dilation and blood pressure. Here's one that I feel like it influences a lot of us. Everyone is hearing that probiotics are healthy and wanting to find a way to improve their gut microbiome through taking probiotics. And there's even research, this study's in mice, actually. So, take it with a grain of salt, because we've cured a lot of things in mice and then haven't had it translate well into people. But here's a study with mice showing that some probiotic strains, Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium, the specific strains are listed in the citation here, have been shown to reduce the load, the LDL, the bad cholesterol, and blood pressure, potentially lowering cardiovascular risk. Furthermore, and here's the message you're hearing from me all the time, this one I have full confidence in, prebiotics, like the fiber that feeds good bacteria, can further enhance the production of short-chain fatty acids, improving metabolic and cardiovascular health. Now, while we're on the topic of probiotics, I want to share a really important message, which is that probiotics are usually transient. So I think a lot of people, when they take a probiotic, they imagine that that probiotic is going to colonize their gut and become part of their permanent resident gut microbiome. And that is not usually the case. Most probiotics on the market are produced in the presence of oxygen. Remember, we just learned that most of the anaerobes, 1,000 to 1, most of the microbes in our gut are anaerobes that cannot tolerate oxygen. Well, it's a real pain to manufacture things anaerobically. Getting those conditions going to produce anaerobes is much harder than fermenting bacteria that can tolerate oxygen. So an average probiotic is an oxygen-tolerant bug that just passes right through you. Now, you might prefer that it passes through you. I'm not saying we want these bugs to colonize, but I just want people to know that most likely, if you're eating a probiotic, it's not going to colonize your gut microbiome. And most of the claims on those packages have very little evidence to support them. So just really take what you see on a package about probiotics with a grain of salt. Probiotics are an enormous industry, $70 billion. I think it's just amazing. In fact, the size of the market for probiotics is potentially even bigger than that it is for antibiotics. So, this is just amazing how much money people are spending on probiotics when we don't really have evidence that they're helping us very much. In fact, in my upper division microbiomes course at UC Irvine last week, we had a really fun activity where I asked everybody to go and find the craziest probiotic label that they could find. People found amazing probiotics that claim all kinds of things about health that there was no evidence to support. I can't even say some of the things out loud here. They feel inappropriate. I mean, it was just amazing. And we even had an activity where we had everybody rank the probiotics and score them a bunch of different categories. And we gave them a sus score, like a suspicion score, for whether or not they were able to help our health. And there are some that have really strong evidence about them. And I welcome questions about this. I've been interested in it for years, and I really have been paying attention, and I'm happy to talk about it. But, when I say that I think you need a certain kind of microbiome to help your heart health, I don't actually have a probiotic to suggest that I am sure will help in that direction. So I don't want my comment to prompt you to run out to the store and buy a bunch of probiotics, because it's very hard to know if they'll help. What I do know will help is eating fiber and fermented foods. And so actually, I should say, in that $70 billion figure I just shared with you, that actually includes fermented foods like yogurt, and which I support 100%. So that's part of why that number is so big. But, I'll share this study I've shared with you before. This is the Fee-Fi-Fo study from Stanford, where they show that people eating just fiber in this green plot over the course of a mainly 10-week intervention, you don't actually see a general increase in gut microbial diversity. The y-axis of this is the different types of bacteria in the gut. And so you see it's kind of like a little flat or variable on the green side of the plot. But on the purple side of this plot, in this study, people were encouraged to eat both fiber and fermented foods. For this study, the fermented foods included a cup of yogurt at breakfast, a cup of kombucha at lunchtime, and a cup of kimchi at dinner time. And again, this went on for like about 10 weeks. And you see more generally across the people in this study, you see an increase in gut microbial diversity. And you might ask, oh, are those the yogurt bugs or the kimchi bugs colonizing the guts of the participants? And actually, no, it's not the food microbes that are colonizing the guts of the people in this study. It's actually that what we think is that the molecules in the fermented foods are promoting the growth of microbes in our guts that otherwise might stay in lower abundance. So they're nurturing small communities of bacteria that otherwise might not have been promoted and giving them a chance to rise up above the limit of detection in this study. So the message is eating both fiber and fermented foods together is a great way to increase your gut microbial diversity. Other things that increase gut microbial diversity are actually social human factors. So being social is good for you in so many ways. And part of it is that you might get some healthy microbes from your friends. Okay, so I have another message in this direction, which is that I think a lot of people, when they are taking antibiotics, have the idea that they could take probiotics to help their gut microbiome recover from having taken antibiotics. And here's a question that, feel free to ask me more about it during the question and answer session. But, here's a question. Would you consider eating more fiber while you're taking antibiotics rather than taking probiotics? And I'll tell you that there is a study where they showed what happened when people were taking probiotics after antibiotics. And they found that it actually slowed the return of the healthy anaerobes in the gut. Now, I've been telling you the probiotics tend to be oxygen tolerant, bugs that are easy to manufacture. They might not be very adapted to the human gut. Those probiotics, they actually prevent your healthy, normal anaerobic community in your colon from being able to come back. So people taking probiotics after antibiotics actually have a slower return of their healthy gut microbiome compared to people who just didn't take anything at all. Now, one thing that can protect you is eating fiber. The fiber will give your anaerobes a place to hide while the antibiotics are coming through. So there's even an article here in the New York Times that I really loved that really, in my opinion, got it right, that if you take antibiotics and you eat fiber, you can protect your gut microbiome. Okay, my last story related to gut microbiome and heart health is that we're starting to really understand at a personalized level how different medications that people often take for heart disease are impacted by their microbiome. And so future treatments could include microbiome targeting drugs or engineering probiotics that can come in and help you avoid the production of those toxic molecules from eating red meat. Or even using fecal microbe transplants to push your microbial community into a direction that helps you respond well to statins or helps you respond well to eating red meat and avoid the production of those toxic molecules. Now, I just used the word statins, and that's where I want to take our conversation in my last story. What are statins? Maybe many of the people in this audience are taking them. Many people in the United States and around the world are taking statins. I think it's the most widely prescribed and the biggest profiting drug in the world. It's like a dream for pharmaceutical companies to have a drug that people take every day for the rest of their lives. And that's what the idea is with statins. They're recommended for most people over the age of 40 in the United States. So statins are prescription medications that are used to lower cholesterol levels in individuals with heart disease or increased risk of developing heart disease, especially those cholesterol plaques, the atherosclerotic heart disease. So how do statins work? They lower cholesterol levels in the blood by blocking endogenous production of cholesterol in the liver. So I was talking about how most of the cholesterol is made in your body, and it's actually in your liver that it's being made. So what statins do is they prevent your liver from dumping cholesterol into your blood. And so that will reduce the chances that you'll end up with atherosclerotic plaques because there's just less overall cholesterol in the system. So most people who take statins succeed in having their Many people who take statins succeed in having their cholesterol lowered. At least that's the message that you get at the doctor. And that's where my story goes next, because there's actually a real heterogeneity in the response to statins. And some of that variability in our response to statins can be explained by the gut microbiome. So not everyone does have their cholesterol go down when they take statins, and that is associated with certain microbiome types. And that's really the main message I want you to get from this study, which was led by Sean Gibbons up in Seattle. And he showed that there are blood markers that can tell you if you're going to be someone who responds well to statins. So gut overall diversity is negatively associated with a response to statins. And people who have a Bacteroidetes enriched type microbiome are at higher risk of having a statin-induced metabolic disruption. Some people who take statins, it actually can push them towards type 2 diabetes. And that's more likely in the people who have Bacteroidetes in their gut microbiomes. So I just think this is fascinating. We often have to make decisions on a public health scale about whether a drug is going to help people, where we can't really put them into smaller groups to avoid risks from the medications. And so maybe understanding our microbiomes in the future is going to help us make more personalized decisions about medications. And we could push our microbiomes toward having the kind of composition that helps us respond well too. Okay, so that is my last story. To be honest, the message is really not different than something that we could have learned from our grandparents or from Michael Pollan: eat food, not too much, mostly plants. It really still applies here. Here's the summary of my stories. We're going to send the 5 key take-home points via email. You know, my biggest pitch is always to fill your fiber gap, to find a way to fill your fiber gap. Avocados are surprisingly so high in fiber. That's their creaminess. Think of the creaminess of oatmeal or avocados or red lentil soup. That is fiber. Same with chia pudding. If you just pick one of these things and get yourself to do it every day, whether it's eating chia pudding or a cup of beans, that really could help your health. So here I am in the kitchen. I'm going to pass it back over to Chef Jess in just a minute here. Here's my 5 key takeaways, and these will go out and they'll be available to you on the website. And then same with the recipes. The recipes are up there on the website and in your email as well. So with that, I will stop sharing and pass it over to Jess.
And I think you can see me. Nice. Okay, so we're actually doing 4 recipes. So I'll try to be quick. No, I had an extra one and I didn't know which one I should do. So I was debating for a while. I am going to share my screen now. So these are really cool, fun recipes that obviously are good for your heart and have a lot of fiber. One of the things we try to do a lot in here are smoothies. And a lot of people have questions about smoothies, whether or not they still have the fiber content and things like that. Vitamix is doing a big study right now on fiber content and whether or not the fiber content is actually like, is it really, are we really destroying that much? And to be honest, we're not. So don't think of a smoothie as a bad thing going forward. What I want you to do, though, is going forward, when you make your smoothies, you want them to be at least 60% of a vegetable. So what do I mean? You can't just have fruits, okay? So that's not a smoothie. You want bulk. And so how can I bulk this up without adding spinach? So one of the things we've introduced people to is frozen cauliflower. There is so much cauliflower in this world now because everybody needs to we rice cauliflower for pizza, fried rice, really anything. And it doesn't have much flavor. So if you have just frozen riced cauliflower, that will become your vegetable then. And then you can just take a banana. You can freeze the whole banana. You don't even need to peel it if you don't want to. Let it thaw a little bit, and then they're really easy to peel. So if you're in a pinch and you just don't want to go through cutting all your bananas up, they do freeze, but you do need to let them thaw a little bit before you can get them out. And if you are I found out recently that you can ripen bananas quickly in the microwave.
What?
Yeah, and I don't know if it works. I have no idea, but you can't do it with an avocado. So I was like, oh, interesting. I should try it.
I want to know. I
Yeah,
want to
I
try
was
that
like,
with
yeah. And so you can put it in, and I guess it helps
peel
ripen.
on.
Peel on, yeah. And it'll ripen it or like bring up the sugars probably. So I'm adding the cauliflower, and then we're going to add a little bit of cinnamon. Remember, the cinnamon tricks us into thinking that it's sweet. And then I've got a little hemp seed, extra protein.
And fiber.
And fiber, sorry. Yep, everything. Cacao, fiber too. Raw cacao. So if you can use raw cacao, this is a great place to put it because you're not going to heat it and then kind of destroy its antioxidants. Nut butter of any choice. So you can use almond, peanut butter even, cashew butter, but unsweetened, unsalted nut butter. And then our milk. Okay, so you can choose whatever kind of milk you want. Now, this is the fun part. You weren't here last month and where I was talking about it. So we are in the world of dates. Everybody loves dates, right? And dates are great because they're sweet. But I was on the call, and Camber's going to hear this. I was on the call with the Prune Council, and they were like, we should start using prunes like we use dates. And so I would challenge you, yeah, try using prunes instead of dates to sweeten things. The date is sweeter. I will tell you, the date is very sweet compared to the prune. But if you think about these dried fruits as sweeteners, you can add them into a smoothie and then not add other sweet stuff. So you can even use apricots, but just kind of like a dried fruit that you like. Understanding the date is going to be the sweetest though. Right? So that just goes in. Always, okay, so for those who have Vitamixes and have destroyed or burned them within the first month of purchasing them, there is a reason. You can't just turn on a Vitamix. It has to slowly go up. The motor in here is so strong, it will just try to blend everything and it will not catch. If it's not catching onto something, it'll burn its own motor out. So there is on the Vitamix on the back like a flip that kind of like a kill switch, I guess. And so it does go off on its own. But just when you start with the Vitamix, always start slow, or a high-speed blender, start slow and then go higher. And I didn't do it. See, look, I'm already doing it wrong. There we go. And that's it. So in the future, you can take all of these items and just put them in a freezer bag and freeze it all together. Or you can even, if you're somebody who likes, say, ice cream more than a smoothie, you can take this and then just freeze this. And then you can have it as a dessert of some kind as opposed to drinking it. But it's a chocolate one, which is a little bit different. And you could add spinach. Yeah, easily. Nice and easy. Okay. Next.
One of my students brought avocado black bean brownies to class.
Oh, nice. Nice.
That was really cool.
Yep.
That's another of your recipes.
Yep.
That looks really good.
Always smoothies are great. Especially if you just have kids that just want chocolate milk all the time. And you're like, okay, well, I've got to add something in it to make it healthier. Okay. So let's make some chicken asparagus bundles.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so this is a fun one, a little bit more complicated, I understand, than we usually do. But it's a great way to incorporate asparagus. And I can show you a couple of cool techniques then to help you start making similar items. So you can buy chicken breast already pounded thin for you. So you don't need to pound it thin if you don't want to. It's really up to you. But what we're going to do is we're going to create kind of like a crust on the outside. So there's some mustard, Italian seasoning. We're going to zest half a lemon and then also use a little lemon juice. And this just ends up becoming kind of the seasoning for our chicken then. We're going to crust it with this. And I'm going to show you how you can make how you can cook everything in one pan and make a sauce out of it too. So we're only going to use half. Boy, I don't have any cuts.
Or you'd be feeling it.
I know. I can. Nope, nothing. Sorry to walk back and forth. I don't have my tools in front.
No, I think it's cool people see the kitchen.
That we're going around back and forth. Okay, so this is a cool like mustard. stuff that you can put onto any kind of meat. Now, what does this do? Mustard kind of preserves the moisture inside the meat for you. So it's a cool way, especially if you're working with chicken breast, to keep it moist. So I'm going to take my chicken breast and I have some asparagus that I blanched. So what does that mean? I just put it in some boiling water, cooked it for a minute, and then put it in some ice water. You don't have to do that, okay? You can add it raw. Some people like asparagus a little bit crunchier. Some people like it a little bit not crunchy. So it's really up to you what you like. If you like it a little bit softer, then blanch it like I have and then add it. So I've got 2 chicken breasts, right? And we're going to stuff them. And so if they're not pretty, that's okay. But I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. You can pound it. But what I like to do sometimes is just take a knife and just kind of open it up. Just like that. I'm going to take off this piece right here. And we're going to put a piece of cheese in the middle. Just one piece of cheese right in the middle, just like that. And then we're going to take 4 asparagus pieces and then roll up. And obviously, if you know me, I don't season very often. And so you can season the middle of the chicken if you want. I find we're going to make a sauce with this. So I find it's enough if we have it. Yeah, they're still a little bit. Chicken breasts are very large these days. And so it's hard to tell. And if you do this with your cheese, don't reuse your cheese if you touch it. Don't go around touching because this is chicken. Okay. And that's it. Okay. You can use some toothpicks to seal it if you want. I have twine and I'm just going to wrap it up. And then I have a cast iron pan that I'm going to use today just because my stainless isn't as large. My stainless is too large and I want to make a pan sauce out of it. So in order for me to make a pan sauce out of it, I need to make sure that I'm not going to burn all the liquid. And I don't have much liquid with this recipe, so I'm going to have to do it a little bit. I'm just going to bundle this one.
I got a question about how microbes would be spread socially through your friends.
Okay,
It's not a kitchen conversation.
No, it isn't. But I remember telling everyone the story of my psoriasis and how, I went to a Korean. I had a really bad psoriasis on my elbow that I could not figure out for the life of me. And I went to one of those Korean scrubs, the Korean scrubs or the day spas. And these women, were one after the other, kind of scrubbing you down. My psoriasis disappeared. And most dermatologists would tell me never to do something that crazy, which is to go scrub off. But what I'm assuming happened was you're in this like sauna in this room and there's just so much microbes going around. And I'm assuming I picked up on good stuff.
Wow.
Maybe.
I did not think of it that way. You told me that story before.
Yeah.
It's a really cool hypothesis.
And I was like, maybe that is the reason why. I don't know.
That could totally be. Well, I just spent the week at the Microbiome Center in San Diego at a meeting where there was a woman from Yale who had some really cool studies in both animals and in people about microbial diversity relating to like the size of your social network.
Oh, wow.
And she even showed that like recovery from antibiotics was better for people who had a bigger social network.
Interesting.
And so it just suggested that you're picking up the microbes from the other people. That doesn't tell us the mechanism already. One of my colleagues in San Diego did do a study where he compared people who were married and lived together versus people who became roommates via Craigslist. And it was like a small study. So this is not one.
But those are fun studies. Yes.
People. This is like a dozen people.
Yeah.
But he found that it took about 6 weeks before people were sharing about 25% of the phages in their gut.
Oh, wow.
And presumably it's from sharing a kitchen and a bathroom.
And the air that you breathe. And
like our dust is made from skin molecules. I hate to say it, but when you flush a toilet, a lot of stuff gets aerosolized.
Yep.
like norovirus actually might spread through the air is a hypothesis. Like people in the Grand Canyon or on hiking trips near waterfalls sometimes will all get norovirus, and it's the thought that it's potential that it's even from like the spray of the water.
The water when you're there. Oh, wow.
And so, you know, actually Carl Zimmer just wrote a big book about it's about what's in the air that we breathe. It just came out this week. And it was when people were so suspicious about COVID spreading through the air, even without it being, and they were saying these big droplets would drop, and they gave us the advice that we were safe as long as we were 3 to 5 feet apart. But I mean, not. There wasn't really enough evidence to support that. And it's, you know, it can stick in all kinds of
things,
particles that come out in our breath. And it's really interesting. You know, we filter our water. But we don't filter our air.
No.
So when it rains and there's sewage in the ocean and we go for a walk at the beach, that's, Kim Prather at San Diego gave a talk.
That's so interesting.
He's the expert on that. And anyway.
That's so cool. It's just interesting, I think, that we're in this world now where we're trying to use knowledge that we're still learning to, and that we're applying it into old concepts too. Just like fermentation, like, oh, now we're going back to the way we used to eat. Because we've learned that that's probably a better way.
All
right. So I'm searing these babies off. You just want some color and some stick. So I know people hate things that stick, but guess what? Stick is flavor. So when things stick to things, it creates flavor on the bottom. So now I'm able to use this to actually make a sauce. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer the chicken to the oven. So I'm just going to put the chicken in the oven to finish off because it's not done cooking at all. But I don't want to overcook it either. And I don't want too much stuff burning on here. So we're going to chuck this in the oven, 425. And then I'm going to add in here some more olive oil. So that stick is all flavor, and some butter. Okay. I've minced up some garlic, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to add my garlic in there with the butter and olive oil. And we're going to scrape it away. Okay. And that's it. Now we're going to add some white wine in here. You don't have to use white wine. If you've got just chicken stock, you can use that. The reason why you use white wine, though, is white wine cleans very well. So white wine has acid in it, and so it's able to actually go in there and kind of pick everything up. And then you're going to cook this until it's like reduced a little bit. So when people write recipes with reducing amount, nobody's asking you to take this out and measure it again. Just eyeball it. You want it to reduce a little because then it'll concentrate the flavor. And then you're going to finish it off with a little bit of chicken stock. And then that becomes your sauce. So you can take this and then just pour it over your chicken when it's done and out of the oven. So that's it for that one. I'm going to quickly wash my hands because I'm going to do some other stuff. Yikes. Okay.
And speaking of the air we breathe, it smells really good in here.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something you can't see on the video.
I know. We need smell vision. Somebody needs to do the research on that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And every time Chef Jess hands off a tray and it just like mysteriously disappears on screen, there's like student chefs in the room, just so you know, who are like getting it to the next step. Oh, that looks so good.
Okay. I took pictures this time too. So I took pictures of all the trays.
Oh, cool.
So egg salad. Because guess what? Eggs are not going to go cheaper. They're nowhere even close. I hope chicken doesn't get to that point. But pretty much, if you've ever seen us make our vegan, we do a vegan tuna. And this is similar. Vegan tuna is with chickpeas, though. And that one uses nori, which is seaweed, as the kind of fishy flavor. I don't have the one ingredient that makes this the egg salad, and you can buy it. It's just hard to find, and I didn't order it in early enough. And it's called black salt. So for people who don't eat eggs, like vegans or vegetarians who want an eggy kind of flavor, there's black salt. black salt is made with sulfur. And so it gives that kind of sulfury taste that you would normally find in eggs, which this, like, obviously a vegan egg salad wouldn't have. So that's the number one ingredient that kind of gives it that egginess. So if you can find black salt, black salt. Then nutritional yeast obviously is also going to give us that kind of umami flavor that, oh, this isn't just tofu, it's something else. We're going to color it to make it look more like egg with a little bit of turmeric. We're going to do a little smoked paprika, mustard, and then of course dill relish. You can use sweet relish too. It's really up to you which one you want to use. And then I've got my nutritional yeast. And if you don't, I mean, this is vegan, but if you have a certain mayonnaise that is a good mayonnaise, like a homemade mayonnaise, you can use your homemade mayonnaise with the egg. Yeah, that's the only egg you're using then in this whole recipe. Or there's some really good vegan ones out there. And also avocado mayo. Avocado mayo is getting kind of expensive though. I've noticed it's gone up in price a lot. So
avocados are getting expensive
and
too.
they will, yeah. Avocados will go up in price. So enjoy your avocados, start buying them and freezing them.
Planting them.
Yep. Grafting them. Apparently that's how the only way. You have to graft them.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So,
although I have a colleague with an avocado tree right here in our neighborhood, and he gets about 300 avocados every other year, and he did not graft them as far as I know.
Really?
Yeah.
See,
I went to see his tree once. You should come sometime. He has a really nice garden.
Well, no, and that's what I'm learning right now. You know, like how there's like the shortage of eggs.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, your neighbors are going to become your best friends right now. And it's going to be the same with like all produce soon. It's like, oh, you grow the tomatoes, I'll grow the onion, and we're all going back to that kind of, ooh.
You mean like that we should have chickens?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have a friend who does, but I didn't realize that chickens only lay one egg a day. So I was like, if you have a big family, then you need a lot of chickens. And so,
well, my son was house sitting for friends who had 5 chickens, and it was in the summer when they were all laying, and he ate 5 eggs for breakfast every night. And then he came home saying, I need 5 eggs for breakfast every day.
Oh my goodness.
And we're like, that's a lot of eggs. But so we're like, okay, how about a little bit less eggs, and we'll like add some yogurt to your oatmeal and that kind of stuff.
Bulk it up.
And then I was like, wanting to get chickens myself, but you know, you have to be more than 20 feet from the neighboring structure in Irvine.
Oh, really?
To be allowed to have chickens. So your neighbors have to be into it, which our neighbors were not.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll ask again now that the eggs are so expensive.
That's true. We have, there's a family around us, and I know it's like everybody knows they have a rooster, but nobody wants to say anything about it. But there's a rooster with 2 hens, and he gets out sometimes, and I'm just surprised they haven't been taken away by a coyote or the hawk that sits in the tree. Yeah, I'm just shocked.
Yeah, our friends had a really careful structure to
put them in.
So I think that's possible. Yeah.
All right. So look, it looks exactly like egg salad. You can put it on some lettuce, I have sourdough bread here. And so we're going to make some sandwiches later with that. But that's as easy as it gets with sourdough with egg salad and tofu. So the last thing is, because I bet you don't think this can happen. Alfredo sauce, if those that don't know it, is probably one of the favorite sauces that people have. Oh, thanks, Rob. And there is a way to make Alfredo. Alfredo is made specifically with butter and cheese. Don't usually use cream. That'd be considered cheating. It's thickened usually with the pasta water too. So pasta water is gold. I always, when my husband drains my water, the pasta water, he knows now not to like ever dump because it'll thicken things up for you. So if you can always have pasta water when you're making pasta, it just kind of smooths things out for you. Now I'm going to melt butter. Melt butter. And then I've got yogurt here. Now, what do we know about yogurt and heat? It will separate. So the whole idea is I need to cool this down enough to incorporate the yogurt without it breaking. Now, if it breaks, it's okay, because guess what's going to bind it back together? Cheese. So this isn't vegan. It's definitely not vegan. It's got yogurt in it. And so you just want to, when you're making this, go for good quality products. Don't cheap yourself out. Use stuff that's high quality because you're not using that much of it. So I'm going to add a little bit of garlic powder too. And then I'm going to add my milk. So I've got milk. You can choose whatever kind of milk, rice milk, regular whole milk is fine too. But now this is going to heat up. Okay, so I'm bringing this up to a boil. And then I'm going to add my yogurt in. And that's it. Well, that's good. Smells good. And then I'm going to add my yogurt. Okay. Take it off the heat after you add your yogurt. And then you're going to add your cheese in. Now, this is what you want to make sure that the cheese that you're using is grated fresh. I know that those packages say that it's 100% cheese, but guess what? They can't sell it that way to you because it's been tossed with cellulose. There are companies now that are saying that they don't have cellulose, but when I melt it and I know it's grainy, it means there's cellulose. And cellulose is just pretty much paper pulp. And it's just put in pre-shredded cheese to prevent it from caking. So there's a reason for it, but not when you're making a sauce like this. So then a nice creamy sauce now. You couldn't tell that it was made from yogurt. It's not separating at all. And this is when I would add my pasta in. So then you've got this sauce. As the sauce cools, it'll thicken too, because think of all that cheese that's in there. And so if you make this sauce, put it in a jar. When you're reheating it, just do it very, very gradually. And if you need, you can add a little extra water too. And you can throw in a little extra parsley at the end too. And that's it. Any questions? No?
Yeah, it looks really nice. But yeah, questions welcome. We will discuss
That's
anything.
Well, thank you for coming too. And hopefully you'll make these recipes.
Yeah.
Because they're good ones.
Yeah, those look really good. And I get to stay for the fun part of eating.
I know, eating it.
Well, I don't see any more questions.
All right.
So thank you guys so much for coming. Heart health is a really central and important one. So it's in some ways less scary because it's so gradual and so common, but that does not make it less scary. I think for some reason we're less scared of things that are common, but that does not make them less scary.
No, not at all.
So I'm glad you guys are learning about that.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.